Picture this. You are lying awake in a chamber of polished stone, far below the golden ceilings of the Palatine Hill. The marble is cold against your back, chilling you even through the thin linen sheet. Around you, the shadows stretch and twist, sculpted by torchlight, shaped by the flicker of silk banners and the gleam of gilded chains. The air is thick with incense, with the sweet sick smell of roses scattered across the floor to hide the iron tang of sweat and fear. You do not remember falling asleep, but you know you will not find rest tonight. Not here, not in Commodus's palace. The echo of laughter snakes through the corridor, low, wet, and unkind. You freeze. The manacles circling your wrists are more for show than restraint. They are your invitation to tonight's entertainments. You know what comes next. The Praetorian guards, already half drunk, will drag you up the stairs, push you through doors you are not supposed to enter, and deliver you to the emperor himself. He likes to make his choices in person. He prefers to see terror bloom in your eyes before the games begin. If you are lucky, he will not remember your name. If you are unlucky, he will. Your body is shaking. The torchlight dances on the mosaics overhead, hunters and stags, gods and monsters. You listen as footsteps approach, heavy and deliberate. You try to slow your breathing, to control the trembling in your hands, but it is useless. You hear your own heart pounding louder than the footsteps. The door creaks open, spilling gold light and voices. "Bring that one," you hear. Commodus likes the frightened ones best. You wonder how many more times you will survive the night. The guards grip your arms, their hands bruising, perfumed to cover the stink of nerves. They march you through passageways lined with frescoes of heroes, Hercules slaying the Hydra, Perseus rescuing Andromeda. Each painted face watches you. Each pair of eyes seems to warn, this is not a place for innocence. The laughter grows louder. The air thickens with anticipation and something darker, a sense of ritual that is not for your benefit. As you enter the grand hall, you catch your own reflection in a polished shield, mouth bloodless, hair slick with sweat, eyes wide and unmoored. In that moment, you are not a person. You are an offering, but you are not alone. Across the hall, another slave kneels, head bowed so deeply you cannot see if they are weeping or merely empty. At the far end, behind a gauze of scented smoke, the emperor reclines, Commodus, child of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, hailed by the city as Rome's living god. Here, in the flesh, he is nothing like the statues. His smile is too wide, his skin too smooth, his eyes too bright. He does not look at you. He appraises you. You know instantly you are to be weighed, measured, and used. Think the emperors of Rome were cold men of duty, obsessed with the glory of the state? Tonight, that lie peels away like rotting paint. Commodus has rewritten the rules of power. Every senator in attendance knows it. His favorite amusements are never spoken of in daylight, yet everyone pretends not to hear the screams that seep from the palace after midnight. The old world, the world of stoic virtues, died the moment Commodus ascended the throne. Now only spectacle matters. Spectacle and submission. You recall the words whispered among the palace slaves, "No one ever comes back the same." The official stories, the histories to be written years from now, will call Commodus a madman, a gladiator, a fool obsessed with games. They will say nothing of what you are about to experience. The truth is darker. His perversions are not merely personal vices. They are rituals, systematic, rehearsed, and watched by a select audience of Rome's most powerful men and women. Tonight, you are both the spectacle and the warning. A hand shoves you forward. Your knees strike the marble. The pain is sharp, but you welcome it. It means you are still alive. The Emperor's gaze finally lands on you, heavy as a stone. He waves lazily, and the musicians strike up a tune, something foreign, unsettling, meant to drown out the sounds that will follow. The crowd gathers, their masks hiding nothing. You sense the hunger in the room, the thrill of watching someone else become a victim. It is not just the Emperor who feasts on humiliation here. The palace is a living organism, fed by fear, gossip, and complicity. You see senators, men you once thought above suspicion, nudging each other, making wagers. A patrician's daughter, barely older than you, is forced to dance, stripped of her dignity and her jewels. The laughter is sharper now, tinged with something like relief. Better you than them. No one wants to become Commodus's new obsession. The safest place in Rome is in the shadows, unseen. But you cannot hide. Cassius Dio, the historian, will one day write that Commodus considered nothing forbidden, nothing sacred. You feel the truth of it in your bones. There are no rules here, no gods, no laws, no pity. Only the will of the Emperor and the price of boredom. The ritual begins. Commodus calls for the contest, a game of chance and cruelty. You and the others are paired off, forced to perform, to outlast, to out-humiliate. The rules change with each round. Sometimes it is a question of endurance, sometimes of obedience, sometimes of survival. The Emperor watches with hungry eyes, amused by suffering, delighted by desperation. You learn quickly, there is no dignity here, only the hope that tonight the spectacle will end before it consumes you entirely. You think of escape, but the palace is a labyrinth. Every door is guarded, every corridor ends in another chamber, another audience, another chance for Commodus to invent a new humiliation. Even sleep is no refuge. In the few hours you are permitted to rest, your dreams are haunted by laughter, by the memory of hands grasping, by the knowledge that tomorrow the games will begin again. This is the world Commodus has built. A world in which pleasure and pain are indistinguishable, where intimacy is weaponized and survival means sacrificing the self, night after night. The official records are silent. The city pretends not to notice. But you in this room know the truth. The greatest horror is not what happens, but that it happens with the full complicity of Rome's finest. You are nothing, and yet you are everything. Proof that beneath the marble and gold, beneath the rituals and the laws, the real Rome is a place of shadows, secrets, and suffering so profound that no history will ever capture it. Now the torches burn lower, and the Emperor rises. The night is not over. For you, it has only just begun. You are kneeling on the polished floor, surrounded by the thunder of applause and the whispers of courtiers who never meet your eyes. Commodus signals, and the night's real entertainment begins. You are no longer a person, only a piece in a living chess game designed to amuse a man who wields the power of life and death as casually as a child breaks toys. Each glance from him is a test. Will you flinch? Will you beg? or will you do what you must to survive? The Emperor loves novelty. You sense it in the way he surveys the assembled bodies. Boys and girls selected from across the empire for their beauty, their strength, or simply their vulnerability. The contest is a favorite. Victims paired off, forced into mock battles, dances, or degrading pantomimes. If you lose, if you displease him, or if you show too much pride, your punishment will be swift and creative. The guards watch for signs of hesitation, waiting for Commodus's cue. He prefers punishments improvised on the spot. The more degrading, the better. But here's where it gets worse. The cruelty is not hidden behind closed doors. Senators are present. Rome's most powerful women sit in shadowed alcoves, sipping wine, exchanging silent glances as they watch the spectacle unfold. Tonight, a senator's son is called forward, ordered to recite poetry while dressed as Venus herself. Laughter crackles, but you catch the boy's mother in the crowd, her face fixed and white as marble. To object would be to invite ruin. Everyone plays their part. You learn to read the language of survival, how to blend in, how to lose just enough to avoid attention, but never enough to risk being called again. For every victim humiliated in front of the court, 10 more are scarred in secret. Commodus keeps a private ledger, known among the slaves as the Liber Eroticus. The book, rumored to be filled with names, punishments, and special requests, is guarded more closely than any state document. What is written in those pages decides who rises and who vanishes. Historical records offer glimpses. Cassius Dio, who once attended these night sessions, writes, "He delighted in seeing men reduced to animals, women to slaves, and the proudest houses brought low in the service of his pleasure. You see it in every corner of the palace. Noble daughters displayed before reveling guards, foreign princes made to crawl and bark like dogs, their fates decided by a snap of imperial fingers. But the system is more than personal vice. Commodus turns pleasure into a public ritual of power, a game of dominance that binds everyone to his will. Those who refuse, those who flinch or hesitate, are named enemies of pleasure. A private joke among the praetorians that means public disgrace, loss of property, or a silent execution. Even the highest in Rome must participate, if only to prove their loyalty. There is a whisper, shared in fearful tones among the servants. Better to be a shadow than a favorite. You witness it firsthand when Marcia, the emperor's most trusted concubine, approaches the dais. Her beauty is legendary, but tonight her task is simple: to lead a group of new captives through a ceremony devised by Commodus. She smiles, but her eyes never leave the ground. Later, you hear her weeping behind the tapestries, praying to gods who do not answer. The games grow more elaborate. Commodus invents the Night of the Labyrinth, a sprawling ritual that forces victims to find their way through a maze of curtains, each chamber holding a new trial, a riddle, a performance, or an act of degradation. If you succeed, you win nothing but exhaustion. If you fail, you join the long list of names entered in the ledger, and your torment becomes the court's next favorite story. But here is the real horror. The line between victim and accomplice blurs. Those who survive the longest are rewarded. A senator's loyalty is measured not by his wisdom, but by how many gifts he offers to Commodus's pleasure chambers. You see mothers urging their daughters to smile at the emperor, fathers trading the innocence of their sons for a seat at the feasting table. The currency is obedience, and everyone is for sale. The emperor rarely punishes with death. He prefers to break people slowly, to watch them undo themselves in their desperation to please. Sometimes he will stage mock weddings, pairing the most beautiful boys and girls, dressing them in jewels and silk, forcing them to perform before the court. The guests applaud, pretending the horror is merely theater. But the tears on the bride's face are real. The trembling in the groom's hands is real. And every humiliation is carefully recorded in the Liber Eroticus. You see how quickly Rome adapts to this new order. At first, the city whispers in outrage. Soon, the laughter grows familiar. For every senator who privately mourns a daughter's disgrace, there are 10 more who petition Commodus for a place in his games. According to the Historia Augusta, gifts poured in from every province, exotic slaves, rare delicacies, and elaborate entertainments to win the emperor's favor. Commodus does not need to threaten. He need only invite. But as you watch night after night, you begin to understand the truth. These spectacles are not only about pleasure, they are about control, about erasing the last boundaries between public and private, dignity and shame. The emperor's gaze is everywhere. The only way to survive is to become invisible, to lose yourself in the crowd, to never let your name be spoken by his lips. And then comes the night when you cannot escape notice. You are chosen to serve wine, to pour it for the emperor as he leans back on his couch, surrounded by men who once ruled provinces and women who once ruled households. He locks eyes with you and smiles, a slow, knowing smile that promises nothing but suffering. He asks your name. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. The room falls silent. Everyone waits for your answer, knowing that your fate is being decided in this moment. This is when the mask drops. You realize you are not a person to him. You are not even a body. You are a tool, an instrument to demonstrate his power to every witness in the room. Your fear is a gift, your pain a lesson, your humiliation a kind of currency that keeps the machinery of his court running. And in that moment, as Commodus raises his cup and the crowd begins to cheer, you are offered one bitter truth. Survival will cost you everything that made you human. Now that you've witnessed the spectacle Commodus designed to crush dignity and breed obedience, you're beginning to see the patterns hidden in history's shadows. If confronting these suppressed truths awakens something in you, a need to see what really lay beneath Rome's golden surface, hit subscribe now. It's the only way to continue unearthing the testimonies Rome wanted buried and to confront the realities that power tried to erase. Stay with this story, because what comes next will make even these horrors seem tame. You have lost track of how many nights you have survived in Commodus's palace, how many times you have watched the court's laughter harden into something hungry, how many new faces have been broken and discarded before your eyes. You no longer hope for rescue. You only hope to make it through another dawn. But now, Commodus's cruelty has evolved. The games are no longer enough. His appetite has shifted from spectacle to domination, punishment as a political tool, pleasure transformed into a weapon meant to terrify and control the most powerful families of Rome. You are summoned to a new kind of audience, no longer just a passive witness, but a necessary piece in the emperor's theater of humiliation. It begins quietly. The emperor sits, his body glittering with oil and gold, surrounded by a carefully selected group of senators, their wives, and their children. He calls for silence. You can hear your own breathing echo across the marble. Tonight's ritual is different. No laughter, no drunken shouts. Only Commodus's voice, soft and almost gentle, as he announces the first tribute. A senator's wife, dressed in jewels, is ordered to the center of the chamber. Her husband watches, his jaw clenched so tight, you wonder how he has not shattered his own teeth. The emperor's command is clear. She must kneel and beg forgiveness, not for any crime, but for the pride of her family. You realize with mounting horror that this is no longer about pleasure at all. It is about erasing the last remnants of dignity among Rome's ruling class. But here is where it becomes more twisted. Those who resist are punished publicly, their disgrace made legend by the court's scribes. Commodus keeps records, Palatine registers, they are called, inventories of every humiliation, every act of submission, every family broken and forced to kneel. According to Cassius Dio, he delighted in turning the Senate into a spectacle for the rabble. No tradition, no ancestor, no office was sacred if it amused him to destroy it. You see, in these moments, the true genius of his depravity. Commodus orchestrates the ruin of families not through violence alone, but through ritualized shame. He orders noble sons to recite poetry dressed as slaves, compels daughters to serve wine naked before the guests, forces mothers to praise his name while their husbands watch in silence. You realize that every humiliation is a lesson, a warning to all who might dream of defiance. But here's where the game deepens. Commodus's cruelty is not random. He watches reactions with a gladiator's eye, searching for the smallest sign of resistance. If you flinch, if you hesitate, you are called forward. You become the next demonstration. The emperor's favorites, men and women once praised as the ornaments of Rome, are now weapons in his hands. Their beauty is used to break others, their obedience to shame the proud. You are pulled into this system day by day. Sometimes you serve as a witness. Standing at the edge of the hall as a senator's daughter is paraded, forced to sing as her father looks on in silence. Sometimes you are forced to participate, acting out scenes devised by the emperor, always at the edge of disgrace yourself. There is a hierarchy even here. Those who serve most obediently are granted better food, warmer clothes, the promise of safety, promises broken as easily as they are made. One night, the emperor orders a mock wedding, pairing a noble youth with a favored slave. The ceremony is performed before the whole court. The bride and groom are both trembling, their humiliation absolute. Commodus officiates, his voice dripping with mockery. The guests applaud, but you see the terror in their faces. Everyone knows that tonight it is safer to laugh than to weep. But this, too, is strategy. By forcing his victims to participate in each other's shame, Commodus spreads the stain across every family, every name. You realize no one will speak out. No one can, because everyone is implicated. The Senate is powerless. The guards bought and loyal. The priests silenced with gold and fear. Historical records from Herodian describe these spectacles as the theater of power, where the emperor's pleasure is the instrument of policy, and the wounds of the court are the foundation of his rule. You see it unfold night after night until even the guards avert their eyes. The city outside the palace walls grows quiet. The rumors intensify, but no one dares intervene. And yet, the appetite for novelty never wanes. Each week brings a new invention, the Feast of the Beasts, where guests are forced to mimic animals for the court's amusement. The Dance of the Vestals, where girls are stripped of their sacred robes and made to serve wine to drunken soldiers. The Triumph of the Eunuchs, where castrated boys, their voices still high and trembling, are paraded in chains as proof of the emperor's dominion over all. But the most chilling ritual is reserved for those commonest suspects of disloyalty. You witness it one night, the court, silent as a senator, is accused of withholding delight. The man is forced to kneel, to beg forgiveness, to kiss the emperor's feet before all assembled. You see the hatred burning in his eyes, but also the resignation. He knows his fate is sealed. The next morning, he is gone. No one asks where. You are not spared. There are nights when the emperor points at you, demanding a song, a dance, an act of submission you could never have imagined before entering this palace. Each performance is a test. If you succeed, you are forgotten for a while. If you fail, your punishment is swift and public, a slap, a humiliation, a threat that you will be next for the worst of the games. But here is where the line blurs once more. You begin to see how easy it is to become an accomplice, how survival demands your silence, your complicity, even your participation. The longer you endure, the more you are shaped by the demands of the palace. You learn the secrets of pleasing without hope, of obeying without pride, of watching suffering with a face like stone. As Commodus's tyranny grows, the rumors outside become more dangerous. Plots begin to form. Servants whisper of poison, of daggers, of conspirators waiting for the right moment. But inside these walls, the rituals continue. The emperor's pleasure has become a system, a machinery of fear that no one dares to break. You do not know how long you can endure. But you do know this. Every humiliation, every broken spirit, every night spent surviving in the darkness is now part of a record the city will never fully erase. Even as the emperor tightens his grip, the cracks begin to show. The question now is not if his reign will end, but how many more will be broken before it does. Still, in the echoing halls of the Palatine, with the emperor's laughter ringing in your ears, it feels like the nightmare has only just begun. You wake before dawn, your body stiff from a night spent pressed against the cold stone wall, too afraid to dream. The rituals never end, only change shape. Commodus's appetites are now the law of the land. His whims have become the rhythm by which the whole palace breathes. You barely remember a time when Rome meant marble temples and public feasts. Now, for you and everyone trapped behind these gilded doors, it means obedience, surveillance, and the constant threat of being noticed. This is not a secret. It is an open wound that festers in the heart of the city. In the corridors and antechambers, you see courtiers huddled together, exchanging rumors with furtive glances, their hands trembling as they pass lists of new talents for the emperor's amusements. Procurers and agents move through Rome's neighborhoods, searching for boys and girls with the right appearance, skin untouched by sun, eyes wide and innocent, hair to the emperor's liking. For every child brought in, a family receives a purse of coins or a promise of imperial favor, but the truth is always the same. They are commodities, traded for safety or survival. But here's where it grows even more monstrous. Parents themselves begin offering up their children in the hope of gaining the emperor's notice. You hear a patrician mother instructing her daughter how to kneel gracefully, how to keep her eyes downcast, how to hide her terror. The men who once railed against imperial excess now compete to see whose son or daughter can serve as tribute in Commodus's next spectacle. Dignity is for the poor. Ambition is the only currency that matters. In the palace, the system has become a machine. Each night is organized with military precision, lists drawn up, ranks assigned, tasks delegated. Slaves trained as ushers move through the halls, ushering victims from chamber to chamber. Noble children are dressed as gods and goddesses, painted with gold and ochre, crowned with laurel or myrtle. The emperor gives them titles: Venus incarnate, New Ganymede, Hercules reborn. The masks of mythology are meant to disguise the reality, but everyone in the room knows these are not games. These are rituals of subjugation. Historical records confirm the horror. The biographer Aelius Lampridius wrote, "He did not merely break the laws of Rome, he reversed them. Virtue was punished, vice rewarded. What once was shameful became a badge of favor." You see this inversion everywhere. The upright and honorable are mocked, stripped of status, forced to serve, or even to participate. The court's new favorites are the most willing, the most beautiful, the most easily molded. But the boundaries are dissolving. Commodus no longer confines his excesses to the palace. The rituals spread to the city's elite. Governors and high-ranking officials send rare gifts, exotic animals, jewels, even human delicacies to curry imperial favor. There are whispered stories of banquets where the emperor orders the newest arrivals to perform for guests from every corner of the empire. Some nights, you hear the howls of wild beasts mingled with the screams of the unlucky as Commodus stages mock hunts in the palace gardens. No one is safe, not even those who supply his pleasures. You notice how the underworld thrives. Procurers and fixers, once mere criminals, now enjoy a strange kind of protection. The man who can provide the rarest or most exotic captive is welcomed at the palace gates, handed coins, medals, sometimes even titles. For every child lost to the games, a fortune changes hands. Corruption infects every level, from the lowest slave to the highest senator. Yet the rituals themselves are changing, growing more elaborate and more dangerous. Commodus appears at the banquets dressed as Hercules, wearing a lion skin, wielding a wooden club. He orders the assembled nobles to kneel, to salute him as god and conqueror. He demands that his court reenact the legends of old: mock battles, sacrificial rites, orgiastic processions meant to shock and degrade. Senators crawl on hands and knees, their daughters bound in ribbons, their sons forced to fight like gladiators for scraps of food and the hope of mercy. But here is where the machinery becomes most terrifying. Participation is no longer a choice. Those who refuse, those who hesitate even for a moment, are marked as traitors to pleasure. Their properties are seized. Their names are added to the palace ledgers. A single wrong word, a single failure to applaud at the right moment can mean ruin. You feel yourself changing too. Each morning you wake knowing that today could bring humiliation or a small reprieve. You learn to listen, to anticipate the emperor's mood, to hide your disgust behind a blank mask. You watch as others rise and fall. Favorites granted robes of silk one day, stripped and beaten the next. No one is allowed to feel secure. No one is allowed to forget who owns them. One night, you are forced to participate in a ritual called the Festival of the Masks. Everyone in the hall must wear a different disguise. The emperor parades through the crowd, selecting victims with a flick of his wrist. When he stops before you, he lifts your mask and smiles, a smile that chills your blood. Tonight, he says, you will be my Mercury, fast and clever, but always at my command. You play the part, terrified and numb, knowing that every gesture, every word could decide your fate. Documentary accounts describe the sheer scope of Commodus's entertainments. Cassius Dio wrote that he turned the palace into a brothel, a market of souls where the coin was suffering and obedience. You see the truth of it with your own eyes. There is no escape, only the hope that you might remain invisible a little longer. But here's the final twist. The system Commodus built is self-replicating. The most ambitious courtiers create their own spectacles, organizing private games to please the emperor, each trying to outdo the last in cruelty or extravagance. The children of senators compete to become the next favorite. The cycle tightens, squeezing every last breath of dignity from the city's elite. Rome itself is being remade in Commodus's image, a place where pleasure and pain are inseparable, where survival means surrendering everything but the will to endure. Still, even as the rituals grow more grotesque, a sense of unease spreads. You catch furtive glances among the highest officials, hear whispers of conspiracies forming in the dark. The emperor's madness is growing, and the cost to Rome is becoming unbearable. But for now, the games continue, and you remain a piece in Commodus's masterpiece of degradation, learning, night by night, how quickly a civilization can destroy itself in the pursuit of pleasure. Tonight, the palace has turned feverish. You feel it in the air, the way the torches burn lower, the way the courtiers move with forced cheerfulness, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. Commodus's paranoia has grown as wild and unpredictable as his appetites. Every rumor is now a threat, every face a possible conspirator. And when power is balanced on the edge of a knife, every pleasure becomes a test of loyalty, every humiliation an audition for survival. The emperor's pleasures have grown savage, unmoored from even the pretense of celebration. He orders the guards to seize those who fail to amuse him, senators who fumble a joke, slaves who spill a cup, favorites who hesitate in their performance. Punishment is immediate, public, and extravagant. You watch as a noble boy is bound to a marble column and flogged before the assembly. The emperor taunting, "This is what happens to disloyalty." The sound of the whip cracks through the hall, echoing down corridors lined with trembling witnesses. But here is where the horror tightens. Even Commodus's old favorites are not safe. His chief concubine, Seotodus, once a master of the games, a mentor in survival, falls under suspicion. The emperor stages a mock trial before the court, accusing Seotodus of betrayal. You are forced to watch as the man who taught you how to keep your head down is stripped of his robes, mocked and spat upon, his fate decided by the whim of a man drunk on power. Commodus dismisses the verdict as a joke, but the lesson is clear. No loyalty, no cleverness, no beauty is enough to protect you when the emperor's paranoia demands a new victim. The spectacles become more violent. Commodus, dressed as a gladiator, invites the court to witness contests of blood and terror. You are made to watch as condemned men, chosen for their resemblance to senators or patricians, are forced to fight wild beasts in the gardens. When the lions are sated, the emperor orders mock battles, in which slaves and nobles alike must wrestle in the mud, their bodies smeared with filth, their shame complete. Those who resist are killed, quickly if they are lucky, or slowly if the emperor wishes to make an example. But here's where it grows unthinkable. Commodus's entertainments are now designed to erase all boundaries. He stages blasphemous rites, forcing priests to participate in orgiastic ceremonies, mocking the gods with obscene parodies of sacred rituals. He orders a group of Vestal virgins to serve wine naked, declaring that their purity is a myth, their dignity a lie. You hear the gasps, the choking sobs, the barely concealed rage among the court, but no one dares intervene. The Praetorian Guard stands at attention, their eyes hard, their swords always within reach. Historical records from the time. The secret diaries of Marcia, the emperor's confidant, later revealed in trial, described these nights as feasts of terror, where no one could trust a friend or even their own family. The palace becomes a maze of locked doors and listening walls. Plots breed in whispers, but the rituals continue, each more grotesque than the last. Commodus's paranoia means new purges every week. A senator vanishes, a captain of the guard is replaced, a slave is found strangled in his cell. The message is plain. Fear is the new law, and no one is immune. You learn to read the warning signs. When Commodus is restless, the nights are especially dangerous. He invents new punishments, branding, forced mutilation, the public defilement of bodies, both living and dead. The emperor delights in reversal, in making the highborn grovel and the lowborn lord it over their betters, if only for a moment. You see men who once led legions forced to dance naked for the crowd, women of patrician blood fighting for scraps with kitchen slaves. But even these horrors are not enough. Commodus orders the construction of an arena within the palace itself, a marble ring surrounded by velvet cushions, where the emperor can stage his cruelties in private, away from the gaze of the city. Here the games become a laboratory of the soul's destruction. Victims are chosen for their resemblance to political enemies, or simply for the emperor's amusement. Commodus presides, costumed as a god, his laughter echoing through the chamber as lives are ruined with a gesture. There is one night you will never forget. The emperor, drunk and raving, calls for the procession of the masks. Everyone in the court must participate. Those who refuse are dragged forward, their masks torn away, their faces marked with ash and oil. You are forced to kneel as Commodus circles you, whispering threats and promises, his fingers tracing the edge of your jaw. Tonight, he says, you will be reborn. The ritual ends in screams and silence, broken only by the shuffling of feet as the survivors crawl back to their cells. But here is the final descent. Commodus begins to keep trophies, locks of hair, scraps of clothing, written confessions of imagined crimes. He stores them in a private chamber, a museum of humiliation. The biographer Herodian, years later, would write, "He collected not art, but evidence of broken wills, proof that no man or woman could resist him and live." You wonder if your name is among the records, if your shame will outlast the emperor himself. By now, the palace is a place of ghosts. Those who have not been destroyed have learned to move like shadows, speaking in riddles, trusting no one. The city outside begins to stir with rumors of revolt. You catch glimpses of strangers, praetorians with uncertain loyalties, senators whose faces are gaunt with fear and rage. The cost of the emperor's madness is now plain. Rome is dying from the inside out, and no one can say when the final blow will fall. Still, even as you watch the world unravel, the games continue. Commodus sits at the center, his power absolute, his pleasure the axis around which every humiliation turns. Each day you survive is a victory, but each night leaves a deeper wound. You have become a part of the machinery, a witness to a horror so complete that even the memory of mercy seems like a lie. The question is no longer whether the emperor will be stopped. The only question left is who will be left to remember what he truly did, and who will be left with the courage to speak the truth when the nightmare ends. The night you feel it breaking, everything is strangely quiet. The palace, so often filled with screams and laughter, holds its breath. You are in your cell, listening for footsteps, for the signal that the next spectacle will begin. But instead, you hear whispers, urgent, muffled, close. Keys rattle, a door slides open, and a trembling hand beckons you out. "It's over," someone hisses. "The emperor is dead." You stagger into a corridor choked with smoke, faces streaked with ash and sweat. You see Marcia, once Commodus's lover, now the conspirator who slipped poison into his cup. Her hair wild, her eyes glazed with relief and terror. The plot, whispered for weeks in the hidden corners of the palace, has finally succeeded. Commodus, so long the master of humiliation, is found lifeless in his bath, his body marked by violence but his face eerily peaceful. The praetorians, who once enforced his every whim, move silently, cleaning blood from the tiles, hiding evidence, shoving trembling witnesses into the night. But here is the last, greatest shock. The horror does not end with his death. The city erupts. In the days that follow, you watch as the Senate tears down statues, burns decrees, and scrambles to erase every trace of Commodus's reign. The names of his favorites are blotted from the records. The Liber Eroticus, that ledger of suffering, is destroyed, pages thrown to the flames. Survivors are exiled, murdered, or silenced, lest they ever reveal the true depths of the palace's depravity. And yet, the scars remain. You walk the streets of Rome blinking in the daylight, feeling the city's eyes follow you. Former victims now blend into the crowds, clutching their secrets, haunted by what they endured. Some bear visible marks, branded flesh, broken limbs. Others carry wounds that will never heal. You hear priests declare a new era of virtue. Senators promise the restoration of dignity. But you know the truth. The machinery Commodus built cannot be so easily dismantled. You see the same courtiers in new robes, the same cruel smiles behind painted masks. The palace has new rituals, new names, new games to amuse the powerful. The cycle continues. The city breathes easier, but beneath the surface, the lessons of Commodus's court linger. Power is a game of humiliation, and survival demands complicity. Even those who claim to despise the emperor quietly keep their silence. The true horror is not what one man did, but what the city learned to accept. But here's the final reckoning. The story of Commodus is not just the story of a single man's madness. It is the story of how Rome, master of laws, shaper of civilization, became complicit in its own degradation. The records that survived, fragments from Herodian, Cassius Dio, scraps of letters hidden in walls, tell only pieces of what was done. The full truth remains buried beneath layers of shame and denial. A secret history written in the bodies and minds of those who survived. You cannot escape the memory. Some nights the palace returns in your dreams. The crack of the whip, the laughter of courtiers, the emperor's shadow looming over a hall filled with trembling masks. You remember the faces, some lost forever, some hiding in plain sight. You remember what it cost to survive. And you understand now, Rome's greatest horror was not the cruelty of one man, but the way that cruelty became ordinary, expected, and, eventually, forgotten. You came into this story believing tyrants are monsters set apart from the world. Now you see the deeper truth. Monsters are made possible by 1,000 small choices, by every hand that turned away, every voice that stayed silent, every laugh that joined the emperor's games. If this journey has revealed the shadows that history tried to bury, subscribe now. Let your curiosity and courage pull back the curtain on what power wanted erased. There are more truths to uncover, more testimonies to recover from the darkness. You are part of the chain that refuses to let the silence win. The story of Commodus ends, but the lesson remains. In every age, in every civilization, the machinery of power waits for someone to turn it toward cruelty. You survived because you remembered, because you saw. Now let the past become a warning, a shield, so that no one ever has to walk those halls alone again.